Hey, we're going live a minute or so early. Couldn't get the stream set up in advance, so we'll go ahead and let it get established a little bit, and we'll begin officially here in just a minute or so. Beautiful weather here today, gorgeous cloudless sky, and there's starting to be some hints of color in some of the air and some of the trees. We're not at peak yet, but we're heading that way. And according to the atomic clock on the wall, it's 12 noon straight up. Hi, welcome to our Wednesday Ephphatha Bible study. My name is John Crabtree. I'm the pastor of First United Methodist Church here in Mountain City, Tennessee, and Trade United Methodist Church in Trade, Tennessee. Coming to you from my office at First. We've been back in church for 2 weeks now, and it's going 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. It's going really well. I want to say that I appreciate all the folks who are abiding by the rules and wearing your masks and keeping your social distancing. We are having a bit of a spike here in Johnson County right now, so we need to make sure we're staying on top of this. We really need to get a handle on this situation, and we do that by doing what our health experts say: masking, social distancing, washing your hands, doing all these things, avoiding crowds, that sort of thing. But we're going to hang in there. God is good. Well, let me share with you a mug today. I was perusing my collection and ran across this mug. Let me see if you can see the logo on it. If I can hold it still long enough. Yes, the Museum of the Cherokee Indian in Cherokee, North Carolina. Went there with a church group about 10 years ago now, and we had a blast. Went up and made an overnight trip and went to the museum, and we saw the outdoor play Unto These Hills, and it told the story about the removal of the Cherokee. And I'm glad it was a hard story to hear. The production was awesome. I think they're still doing it, but it's a hard story to hear because it doesn't put us European settlers in a very good light, and that these hard parts of history need to be remembered and not swept under the rug. Yes, we are a blessed nation, but we've done some things that we shouldn't have done, and the Trail of Tears is one of those things. That is a blot on our national honor, a stain that we need to repent of. But anyway, it was an amazing trip, had a good time, and so I got this coffee mug to remember it by. Well, last time we were just beginning the book of Exodus and heard basically what was going on and how the Pharaoh that knew Joseph and Jacob and the family died. A new Pharaoh took over and changed things. And so the Hebrews at this point were forced into labor, and they were having a really hard time of it. And so Moses' mother put him in a basket on the side of the river after the king had said all the Hebrew boys should be killed, and the Pharaoh's daughter found him and raised him as her own. And it's interesting because it goes Exodus 2, verse 10. Pharaoh's daughter names the baby Moses because she draws him out of the water. So that's baby Moses. And then verse 11, one day after Moses had grown up. So again, this is one of those times that makes a jump of 20 some odd years, the Bible does. And it kind of it'll pass by without really being remarked on or noticed unless you're kind of tuned into these things, paying attention to these things, watching for these things. So again, remember that the folks in the Bible live their lives one day at a time just like we do. And so our faithfulness is found in these moments that are recorded in the Bible or recorded in the book of life, or our faithfulness is also made up of these day by day walking with God. When nothing special happens, you just do the best you can day after day. And so it is not a failing or not a sign of God's disfavor if nothing seems to be happening for a while. It's just that it's not time for anything to happen. So Moses has the growing up years and childhood and boyhood years there in the and his teenage years there in Pharaoh's palace, is basically the grandson of the Pharaoh. So you can imagine the wealth and the privilege that he'd been accustomed to. And it's interesting. Let me at least go ahead and read verse 11. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and saw their forced labor. So despite being raised in the palace, Moses still identified with the Hebrews. He went out to see his people and he saw their forced labor. So he has not identified with the wealth and the power that he's been surrounded by, and that's a good thing, because there are too many accounts, current, like real-time accounts of folks, of children who were a part of abusive households who then became abusers themselves. But there's also another, probably larger group of people who grew up in abusive households and swore that they would never do that, and they made different choices. So Moses, even though he was surrounded by wealth and privilege, he didn't identify with that. He identified with his people, and his people were suffering. So he goes out and sees that. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinfolk. That idea is reinforced, that he sees him as his kinfolk. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So he looked this way and that and killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. I'm not a clinical psychologist by any means, but one of the signs of someone feeling guilty, one of the signs of someone doing something that they feel is wrong, is trying to hide the fact or hide the act, or also to avoid the consequences of the act. When somebody doesn't believe that they've done anything wrong, then they're very open about what they've done. And that can be telling in different ways. But Moses, he saw that was wrong, but what he did, he didn't feel comfortable about. He wanted to avoid getting in trouble. So he hid the Egyptian's body in the sand. 13. When he went out the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting. And he said to the one who was in the wrong, "Why do you strike your fellow Hebrew?" He, the other guy, answered, "Who made you a ruler and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Moses heard of it, when Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. So I guess being the adopted grandson of Pharaoh only went so far. So Moses was right to fear the consequences of what he had done. There may have been other ways to intervene. I don't know. That's kind of reading from my situation, reading thousands of years into the past. You don't know in the moment what options were available. So Moses fears for his life, and he flees. He runs. But Moses fled from Pharaoh. He settled in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. But some shepherds came and drove them away. Moses got up and came to their defense and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you've come back so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, well, where is he? Why did you leave this man? Invite him to break bread. Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She bore a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, I've been an alien residing in a foreign land. So it sounds like Moses walked out of Pharaoh's palace, walked across the street to Midian, sat down, got married, and had a son all in the same afternoon. So pay attention to these time clues, because the life is proceeding at normal speed. So these things are all happening, and our Bible writers, the ones who've written down these verbal accounts, are setting the stage for us. They're condensing lots of things. They're editing the story, not to hide things or not to change the meaning of things, but to help it flow. Because you wouldn't want to read a diary that had entry after entry, took the flocks out, watered the flocks, brought them back. I mean, for months and years at a time. That would be kind of boring. So all the high points are what is being recorded. Oh, hey, Robert. Robert's back in the house. Hope you and yours are well. Yeah, we're doing okay. I'm glad to say. I hope you and yours are doing well as well. It's a good thing. Robert's always faithful, so I appreciate that. All right, so Zipporah has given Moses a son, firstborn son, Gershom, and Moses is obviously still identifying with the Hebrews. He's still realizing that he is a stranger in a foreign land. The Hebrews will remain strangers and aliens in the land until they enter into their birthright, until they enter the promised land. And that is quite some time in the future. Okay, 23. After a long time, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned under their slavery and cried out. Out of the slavery, their cry for help rose up to God. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites, and God took notice of them. So God has seen the suffering of his people, and he's going to do something about it. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. Now, it says up in the other chapter in 118, it says Father Ruel, but now he's Jethro, and that could be a name being translated into different languages. Don't freak out about that. The father Jethro, the name Jethro is the one that's more common throughout the rest of Exodus, so we'll just go with that one. Keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, he led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight, to see why this bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. Then God said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry on the account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppress them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He said, I will be with you, and this shall be a sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have... there we go. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. But Moses said to God, If I come to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, Thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever and ever, and my title to all generations. 16. Go and assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have given heed to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt. I declare that I will bring you up out of the misery of Egypt, to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us now go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. I know, however, that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I'll stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I'll perform in it. After that, he will let you go. I'll bring this people into such favor with the Egyptians that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. Each woman shall ask her neighbor and any woman living in the neighbor's house for jewelry of silver and gold and clothing, and you shall put them on your sons and your daughters, and so you shall plunder the Egyptians. So I'm sure this was a bit of a shock to this itinerant shepherd who is living in his father-in-law's house, tending his father-in-law's flocks. I mean, yeah, he was raised up in Pharaoh's palace, but well, let me put it this way: we hear Moses, we think, oh, Moses, big deal, a guy who led the people out of Egypt into the Promised Land, and what a famous person he is. But this is the beginning of that story. Moses doesn't think of himself as a famous person. He's a fugitive. He killed someone. He's a murderer. And again, God is choosing, in a very real sense, the most unlikely people to accomplish his purposes. And again, that's good news, because if God can do it with these folks, God can do it with us. So Moses is getting some really overwhelming news. He is being sent to Pharaoh to tell Pharaoh to release the people. He's going to be telling the elders of the, God is referring to them as the Israelites, so we'll call them that too. Tell the elders of the Israelites that the God, the great I Am, has come to bring them home. And not only that, they're going to plunder the Egyptians. They're going to be asking the Egyptians for wealth and be given gold and silver and all sorts of good stuff. So I can just imagine his mind must have been reeling, like, I don't see how this is going to happen. And in the real world, in the real sense, it can't happen on our own. Moses can't do this on his own. He is the spokesperson for God. And we're going to see, we'll go into all the things that happen, the plagues and all those other things. We'll start that next week. But Moses is being sent. His faithfulness is saying yes to God and actually going, doing what he said he would do, doing what he was asked to do. And then God gives him all the tools. God provides the power for Moses' actions to accomplish the purposes. So God equips Moses to do the work. God is never going to call us to do something that we cannot do. God always gives us the tools and the ability to do the task. What we bring to the table is the agreement, the yes to God, and then the intestinal fortitude to get up and go, to trust God that God will make a way that's where it's not humanly possible, that God will make a way for it to happen. So trusting in God. So the takeaway from this bit is that even though Moses was raised in wealth and privilege, he identified with his people. He knew who his people were. He didn't let the wealth and privilege go to his head and identify with the Egyptians, although he dressed and talked like an Egyptian. So that's what the Zipporah and the others thought he was. But he remembered who his people were and had compassion and empathy for them. He may not have expressed it the right way by killing the Egyptian taskmaster, but he nonetheless had compassion. And so when he is called by God, he says yes with great trepidation and quite a bit of arguing. And we'll go into that next week. But ultimately, Moses knows who his people are, and he has empathy and compassion. So those are the foundational bits that make up a faithful child of God. Know who you belong to, know who your people are, and have empathy and compassion, like seeing with God's eyes. That's a good start. Well, next week we'll start. We'll cover the argument that Moses has with God and what God says, and we'll talk about the calling of prophets and things like that. So until next week, I hope you guys have a blessed week. We are back in both churches, Trade and First. We'll be having worship as usual. And until then, may God bless you. Stay safe, and I hope you have a good week. God bless. We will talk to you later on. Bye-bye.